I'm not a central planner, so I have no system. I don't believe in any system that will be organized by anyone like me, or because I don't know what to do.
Right.
All I know is that the free market can organize it by itself, and all I would be responsible for is enforcing property rights. That's all that governments can do. That's all they should do,
Right.
and that's all they would do in a society that is just. So, I mean, your question: can central banks orchestrate a collapse? They could theoretically. It's possible. I'm saying if a light went off in Jay Powell's head and he says, you know what, this inflationary system, it's going to destroy everyone. I got to end it now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop printing money. I'm gonna sell all the bonds that are on my balance sheet, and I'm going to crash the bond market, and all the banks are going to collapse. And then, but then what would happen to him? He would get lynched. So he even if he wanted to do that, he's trapped. I just finished a show I do once a month with Phil Lowe of the Bitter Draft, and we were talking about endgame violence. It's clearly kicked up a gear. There was that stabbing on that subway of that innocent Ukrainian woman by that crazy guy, and then there was the murder of Charlie Kirk out in broad daylight, and we're seeing horrific violence. And this is not unrelated to gold and silver's rise, because gold and silver don't rise. It's the dollar that falls. And as the dollar falls, all of the people who have relied on a stream of dollars for their inflationary salaries or whatever is dumping dollars into their pockets, they get more squeezed, and they become, if they have a tendency to violence, they'll become more violent. And that's what we're seeing. And Phil actually shared with me a statistic that I didn't know about, and I don't remember the exact numbers that he said, but I know the ranges. And he said he wanted to know what the historical backdrop is, or the precedents are, for violence going towards a hyperinflationary endgame. So he looked how many politicians were murdered or assassinated in Weimar Germany from 1918 to 1923, and the answer was like 378 or something like that.
Really? No way.
But the crazy part was how many of those 378 were murdered specifically from the summer of 1922 and to the end of the hyperinflation 1923. The answer was 350 of the
Wow.
378 in those 12 months, whatever it was.
Hmm.
So as we head into a hyperinflationary endgame, there's more assassinations. It's just how it is, because people will become more deranged. So that's what I'm looking at now. I'm seeing how the numbers for gold and silver, as they get higher and higher, meaning as the dollar gets lower and lower, the insanity comes out from just thoughts and wishes to actual violence in the streets, and that's what we're seeing now.
To understand today's turmoil, history offers a sobering precedent. During the Weimar Republic's hyperinflation between 1918 and 1923, political assassinations soared. Of nearly 380 killings of public figures, the overwhelming majority occurred in just the final 18 months of inflationary collapse. This sudden surge reveals how quickly violence intensifies when a nation's money fails. Hyperinflation destroys trust, wipes out savings, and fuels paranoia. It doesn't just break economies, it destabilizes entire societies. Observers warn that as gold and silver rise against the dollar, the United States may be entering its own dangerous endgame phase of this cycle.
I don't know how a civil war would actually happen logistically, because you have how I would imagine that it could happen is the red states would fight the blue states, but they're all kind of like separated in the country. You'd have the West Coast that might break off and fight, I don't know, Idaho and Montana, but that doesn't make sense.
Right.
That's not really a fair fight. I would see uh, you could have, riots in the streets of the big cities, something like that. You can have a lot of civil unrest, but I don't see how, a formal civil war would actually happen. Who would fight who, and what would be the battle lines? I can't really figure it out. Um, but I mean, what you could have is maybe blue states, making a union, calling each other up. I mean, we're seeing that. We saw something like that when it came to Joseph Ladapo. That he's the Surgeon General of Florida. I think that's his title. They're the
Okay.
head state doctor of Florida, and he said all vaccine mandates are going out the window now. No, no more vaccine, any kind of vaccine mandates. They're all going away in Florida. You don't have to
Nice.
have any vaccines to go to school at all, period. That's it. And then, what's his name? That idiot, Gavin Newsom, and the other idiots that are in charge of those states in the West Coast are like, no, we're standing up for science, and we stand for science, and we're going to make our vaccine mandates even bigger and better, and blah, blah, blah. So those kinds of ideological lineups, it's not big enough to be a civil war yet, but I can see how if the dollar really starts to go out the window, then you could have something like the blue states would say, "Oh, this is all the red states' fault. They're killing everything and cutting spending, and everyone's poor now, and we're going to separate and create our own currency, and all the blue states will come and make their own whatever we're going to call the country and secede from the union." Especially if there's a Republican president, maybe JVD Vance gets elected or somebody more right wing, if you want to call him that right wing. I could see a political divide. I just don't see how you could have a formal civil war other than riots in the streets of the big cities.
Speculation grows over whether America could face another civil war. The challenge lies in geography. Unlike the 1860s, today's political divides are not cleanly regional. Blue states and red states are scattered, making traditional battle lines implausible. Instead, the more likely outcome is localized chaos, riots in major cities, political standoffs between governors, and ideological blocs forming across state lines. Disputes over issues like vaccine mandates already hint at states operating under radically different visions of governance. If financial collapse accelerates, those divisions could harden, not into armies on battlefields, but into fractured governance and open defiance.
Well, if you think about what could happen in an endgame scenario where there's no more dollar value that's flowing through the system because the dollar can't distribute value anymore because it's worthless. So then, therefore, how is the internet going to stay up? I'm not saying it will go down forever, but there's probably going to be, at the peak of it, internet service is going to go off, cell phone service is going to go off for a while. And then if you have no actual community that you know where they live and who your neighbors are and where they are and where your friends actually are, then your phone goes off and you have no more social media connection. You can't really talk to anybody or anything. You're totally isolated,
Right.
totally isolated, and that's what's going to happen to most of the people that spend most of their lives in social media and have no reality beyond that. Whether you're right wing or left wing doesn't really make a difference. If you have nobody in the real world, you're going to be completely isolated in an endgame scenario, at least for a while, and that's going to be terrifying, and you're not really
Yeah.
going to know what to do. So if you're in suburbia, if first of all, if you're in the big cities, I'd get out now. Any big city. If you're in suburbia, knock on neighbors' door. If you don't know your neighbors, knock on your neighbors' doors. Get to know who they are. Make friends on the street. Know where they live. Get to know people who have real skills. Learn something. Find the industrial era where people work with their hands and learn from some of the, local producers. Anything you can to connect in your community. Go to synagogue, go to church, whatever religious events that you can go. Even if you're not religious, these are good people to know because they connect on a ground level, or any other social group that you can participate on where people actually meet each other. Right. This is just basic stuff that when service goes down, it will go down for a while. You don't want to be completely isolated. You want to have a group of people that you can rely on, that you can be friends with, and that can help you out, and that you could barter with if you need to. It's just basic get to know your neighbors. That's all.
In a hyperinflationary breakdown, money loses value and infrastructure begins to falter. Internet access, mobile networks, and supply chains could fail temporarily, leaving people isolated without digital lifelines. For a society deeply tied to online existence, this sudden disconnection would be shocking. Survival would depend on something older: community. Knowing your neighbors, forming local bonds, and developing practical skills would matter more than social media followers. History shows resilience is built locally through trust and cooperation. When national systems falter, human connections at the neighborhood level often determine who weathers the storm and who is left adrift.
I don't deny the existence of secret societies, but I do deny that they have extra special, amazing powers that are beyond anyone's reach to challenge.
Right.
I think they exist. I don't know, the Illuminati or whatever, Skull and Bones. I don't know what these, or you could just say the Ivy League, you know, those kinds of things. I mean, the secret societies might not might not be anything more important than like we went to the same college and we go to the same reunions and we help each other out. But everybody does that in whatever group they're in. Just
Right.
happens to be that because the Fed keeps recycling MIT graduates, they all have this little fraternity and fine, whatever. I think they're a little bit too convenient of a target to say, "Oh, it's their fault. If we get rid of them, everything will be fine," because it's not going to be fine. These power centers tend to attract, if it's not going to be MIT graduates, it'll be just some other clique of, idiots that went to, I don't know, University of Chicago and learned economics, or University of whatever, Berkeley, and then they learn their economics. And then you get one guy from there, and then he starts bringing in his friends from Berkeley, and then you have the same sort of looking thing. So it's convenient to blame secret societies and say, oh, they're part of this pedophile cult. Maybe they are. I don't even know.
Hmm.
But even if we got rid of, let's say, all the pedophile cultists, if they exist, you could argue that they do. You could argue that they don't. I mean, I think there are pedophile groups. I don't know if they hold all the economic power, because that's it's just too far fetched, and
Right.
it's too simple. It's too simple because people want to think, oh, they want to group one group. You get them out, and then everything's fine. Then we can continue in our current inflationary system, and everything will be better. No, it's the system itself. That's what has to change, and it's the cart before the horse. What I think happens is that you enter an inflationary system, and then the flows start going towards powerful people, and then as the inflation makes them more powerful, they get out, they become even more powerful. They get to the forefront, and then people start blaming these groups that got powerful because of the inflation, and then it feeds on itself until everything blows up. But it's really the inflationary system that's the problem, and it's not the secret societies that are really to blame. Those will always be. What will make the secret societies more powerful and too powerful and dangerously powerful is the inflationary system itself, and that's what has to end. And then secret
Yeah.
societies can, go back to, I don't know, cutting stones and, I don't know, talking about architecture or whatever the hell they do. I don't know.
Conspiracy theories often point to secret societies, elitist groups shaping history behind the scenes. While networks of influence do exist, the deeper driver of corruption and concentration of power is systemic inflation itself. As money loses value, those closest to financial centers accumulate disproportionate control. Blaming secret cliques oversimplifies the crisis. Remove one group and another will rise in its place. The true engine of inequality and instability is the inflationary monetary system. Until that changes, elites of different names or schools will dominate, feeding resentment while the root problem, currency debasement, remains unresolved.
I'm not a central planner, so I have no system. I don't believe in any system that will be organized by anyone like me, or because I don't know what to do.
Right.
All I know is that the free market can organize it by itself, and all I would be responsible for is enforcing property rights. That's all that governments can do. That's all they should do.
Right.
And that's all they would do in a society that is just. So I mean, your question, can central banks orchestrate a collapse? They could theoretically. It's possible. I'm saying if a light went off in Jay Powell's head and he says, you know what, this inflationary system, it's going to destroy everyone. I got to end it now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop printing money. I'm gonna sell all the bonds that are on my balance sheet, and I'm going to crash the bond market, and all the banks are going to collapse. And then but then what would happen to him? He would get lynched.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he even if he wanted to do that, he's trapped.
Could central banks deliberately end the system? In theory, yes. A Federal Reserve chair could halt money printing and liquidate bonds, triggering collapse. But in practice, such a move would be political suicide. The banker who pulled the plug would be blamed for the disaster, perhaps violently. Leaders, trapped like everyone else, keep the machine running, hoping to escape before it breaks. The reality is stark. There is no clean exit. The inflationary cycle must play itself out, and with it, society must brace for turmoil. Survival may depend not on policy, but on preparation.
Even if Ron Paul were head of the Fed, he would be trapped too, because what would he say? He would say, "Okay, so people, I'm going to collapse the system now. Everybody hunker down." And then there'd be a then there'd be a bank run the next day. All the
Yeah.
banks would collapse anyway. He wouldn't have to do anything. It would just by him saying that, it would be over.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then he'd be blamed. So the central bankers are caught in the same system that we are. They can't end it, even though theoretically they would have the power to. If they even tried, they'd be lynched and they'd be dead. So they got to keep it going for as long as they can until they have maybe they're smart enough to have an exit plan and they can go to an island somewhere, or they will actually be lynched in the street. I'm not advocating that. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope they just run away and go into a bunker and never come back again. I don't want to see any more violence, but they are as trapped as we are, and they're as hopeless as anybody else, even the poorest.